Hello, YouTube. What are we talking about today? Oh, yeah. Please, God, no, not another 4% rule video. Now, if you're fairly well into the retirement video universe, you've probably seen these videos pop up all the time about the 4% safe withdrawal rate. And there's any number of ideas of what a safe withdrawal rate is, but what you need to understand is that you really only need to learn it one time, right? And all the other videos you see, once you kind of have learned the gist of it, are just sort of rehashes on the same subject, but every once in a while, you see yet another one and another one as new YouTubers enter the universe. And but a couple of issues. One is not everyone is invested in the stock market. In fact, most people are not, and those who are mostly invested in retirement accounts. So it's a small audience, except those who are there out of curiosity, right? I used to, I'm sort of relate something in my life to this whole issue with YouTube videos, all rehashing the same, plowing the same ground, as it's called. I once taught a class on personal financial management at the college level. And I remember I was talking with a class about the book that I had been assigned to teach. And it was in fact, I bought a copy from my own library just to have, but it was a fairly thick book, and I was required to cover the entire book in one semester. So it was about 2 chapters a night. And so no single subject got the attention it really needed, I felt, because in speaking with the students, I found out that sort of readily apparent that what they really needed was the sort of the basics of personal financial management, budgeting, spending plan for their recurring variable expenses. Some even needed to do a spending diary. They had questions like, how much should I be saving? Just the fundamentals had escaped them to date. And I understand that because I didn't really understand the fundamentals of personal financial management until I was when I was 35. I was broke. I'd had no income in over 2 years, and I was over $50,000 in debt. And that's when it finally occurred to me that maybe I should be doing something different with my money. And that is when I went to the local library and eventually read through every book they had on personal financial management. Now, this was back before the internet. This was like in 85, something like that. But anyway, so at some point, I also had a master's degree in business, and so I signed on as a teacher for this class, and so when I was mentioning this to the students, one of them raised their hand and said, "Well, if you don't like this book, why don't you write your own? Why don't you write the book that you think we should be using? That would be more beneficial, more helpful." And I sort of laughed it off, but later on the drive home, I lived about an hour away. It came to me, that's not a bad idea. Instead of complaining, you should do something about it. So that's what I did. I started writing that book, and that's this book here, Money Well Saved. And then I wrote another one kind of as a joke. It was not as a joke. I mean, it had good information, but the title came to me from a student again when I was talking about debt, getting out of debt, getting into debt, why there's no such thing, there's bad debt and there's not so bad debt, but there's no such thing as good debt. And the reason I feel that way is because all debt, good or bad, or however you want to classify it, has the same effect of reducing your spendable income. So I wrote a book called The Debt Whisperer. And then after that one, it occurred to me that, it is entirely possible to retire, not 100%, but semi-retire early in life, because switching over to working half-time really won't cost you as much as you think. So I wrote a book about that, and that book is called "Is It Wednesday Yet?" Because you hear all the time, and just joking around, and towards the end of the week, and someone or the other in the office or in the shop or whatever will say, "Is it Friday yet?" Hoping for the weekend. And the book, "Is It Wednesday Yet?" is about how to have a 4-day weekend for life, not have to wait until you're retired to do the things you enjoy. And so then there was that one. And then I quit writing for a long time because I'd pretty much said all I had to say. And that's the issue with making videos on retirement. After a certain point, you pretty much said all you've had to say. So you see a lot of these channels, once a month they'll go through their finances and their budget, and they'll show you what their investments are doing. But it's hard to find new things to say about retirement, or investing for retirement, or saving for retirement, and it brings to mind, I'm not much for reading romance novels, but one of the first ones maybe that I've ever heard of, it's by Leo Tolstoy, and it's called Anna Karenina. And it has one of the most, if not the most, famous first sentences in all of literature. And that first sentence is that all happy families are happy the same. And all unhappy families are unhappy in their own way. And if you think about it, how could happy families all be happy in the same way? Because the sort of elements of a happy family have to all be in alignment before that family is happy. It has to be a married couple, happy, all the various aspects. The money has to be right. Their living situation has to be right. You have to align all these external factors and some internal factors. Is there, in fact, love there between the mother and father, and the nature of the kids, the health? There's a lot of things, a lot of plates to keep spinning in order to be happy. But there are, and they're not very many in number. The money has to be right, the health has to be good, the housing situation, and finally the relationship between the parents. You get all those aligned, and you're pretty certain to have a happy family. But unhappy families, there's a million things that can go wrong. Besides the four, health, money, housing, and the relationship between the parents. There can be addiction, there can be a stroke of bad luck, there can be, there's all these different ways. And that's why unhappy families are unhappy in their own way. Because that aspect that makes a family happy are not aligned. And so until you align them, the family will never be happy. And that can apply to so many things in life. And one of those is a successful retirement. And I retired in 2007. So I've been retired almost 20 years. But I was also, that same year, I achieved financial independence because, and this is not complex, I worked 30 years for the same employer, and at 30 years, I put in, started drawing my pension, and my pension was $45,000 a year for the first year. But it had a cost of living adjustment, so it went up. Now, I retired in the middle of the year. So, I got half my pension for the first year, and then this beginning of the second year, I got cost of living adjustment that raised that 45 up to about 48. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot of money, but if you go back, 45,000 is like 70,000 today, and 70,000 is about 10,000 more than what the average family income is. So it's a lot of money. It was a lot of money then, it's a lot of money now. Not a lot of money, but the thing is, and the reason I was financially independent is because that $45,000 was more than twice what I was spending every year. My budget back then was about $2,000, and even today, 20 years later, it's only about $25,000. So, what can I say about retirement? It was a no-brainer for me. I just had this job. I had a good job. I was making good money, and I had a good pension, and my costs of living were very low back then, and they're very low today. And now, and when I hit 62, I started drawing my Social Security. I had no option because it was a term of my pension that I began drawing my Social Security. And so I did that, but the net effect was that I got an increase in pay of about $5,000 a year. For nothing, basically. And $5,000 was a lot of money because, let me see, so it's been about 10 years, 12 years, but it's been over 12 years since I've been drawing Social Security, and that money just goes straight into my savings. So what could I tell you about retirement? Get a good job, keep your expenses low, don't carry any debt into retirement. How many ways can you say that? There's not that many ways to say that, but people screw it up. You ask a retired person, what regrets they have, and almost always that person will say, I wish I had started saving earlier. It's not rocket science, right? It's not. That's not that hard to figure out. That the sooner you start saving, the better. So there's really not much I can teach you about how to be happily retired. And if you're retired but you're not happy, well, you're unhappy in your own particular way. What did you do wrong? There was this one guy on. I was watching a video of some guy that is living in his car, and so I left him a comment, and I said, well, could you go into how at 50 years old you wind up living in a car? I mean, because obviously a lot of things had to have gone back. And he answered me, and what he answered was one word. That word was gambling. Yeah. Addiction is what takes a lot of people down. But there's a multitude of other reasons, a stroke of bad luck, bad planning. But the thing about bad planning is bad luck is often confused for bad planning. And what you see most of all, I mean, and the people I've talked to, is it was just bad planning. They just didn't know what they were doing, or they felt that saving for retirement was something they could do later in life, whatever it is. But yeah, I mean, I really don't, especially me, I have no savings. I have no money in the stock market. I have no money in bonds. Why not? Well, because I don't need the security, additional security that bonds would provide in my portfolio, because my two pensions fill the role of a safe haven where your capital is secure. Your principal is secure. The only difference between pension income and bonds is that bonds are more liquid. But I don't even. But that role, that third role, that role of bonds in my portfolio, I have covered because I have like $1.2 million in investable assets. So I don't need any more liquidity in my portfolio. So I don't need any bonds. So why don't I have stocks? Well, most of my money, most of my cash is invested in short and longer term CDs, just sitting in a brokerage account or in money market accounts. And I'm getting about an average of 4%, right? 4% is plenty. I mean, because like I say, I spend about $25,000 a year of my income, and my income is about 120. I'm stacking a lot of cash every year, and I have been, because my expenses have never, I don't think in all those 20 years, ever gone around above $3,000. There might have been periods, after I just bought a house, and but so, but I just don't spend that much money. Like could I? Certainly, I could. I drive a 2012 Nissan Frontier 4-door pickup that I bought new in 2012, and the next car I buy, it will be new as well. It's just, there's nothing wrong with my truck. It runs fine, gets me everywhere I'm going, does all the things a car is supposed to do, and it's not loaded down with computers and electronics that someone in some control station somewhere can shut down and leave me stranded. So, I go and look at new cars, and it's kind of overwhelming. Right in the middle of the dashboard, there's a big computer, and car will cost you 35, 40, 50,000. Just a standard Ford 150 is going to run you 50 grand. So I'm just not motivated. I mean, could I go and pay cash for any one of those vehicles? Yeah, I could. But I just don't see the point. And that's sort of why, that's one of the aspects that makes me happily retired. I don't want a lot of material objects that I do not already own, because the fact of the matter is, when I want something, I just go buy it. But I just don't want that much. I think the last thing I bought was of any consequence was probably my electric bike. So the fact is, no one has a lot to tell you about retirement beyond the basics that you need to get aligned in order to be happily retired. Like these certified financial planners, I'm not knocking them. I'm just saying there's nothing new under the sun. Read The Wealthy Barber. Read The Millionaire Next Door. Read Your Money or Your Life. The basics are all in there. And what a financial planner can do, but only if they're a fee-only fiduciary, they can look at what you're doing with your money and just give you a sort of a rational check on what you're doing, just to make sure you're not missing anything big. For me, my biggest issues are retirement taxes, because the fact of the matter is I'm unmarried, and I have no deductions. I mean, this year, because of the recent changes to Social Security taxes on Social Security, sorry about that. I may get a little bit of a break, but you know, I'm around 22%, and I'll probably be slipping into 25. Could I run some sort of, you know, I could. I have 2 primary residences, and I could rent out one and just live in one. But the fact is that would not be a tax write-off because I don't have a mortgage on that house, and that house would probably make me around $25,000 a year, and so it would just increase my tax load and probably cost me in terms of Medicare. So I don't know. Anyway, what's this channel about? This channel is about not those 4 fundamentals. You can get those anywhere. You can read. In fact, I recommend you read instead of trying to get them off of a video, because a video, you know, anyone can put out a video, but at least when a book is published by a major publishing house, at least there's been some sort of second look at it. You know what I'm saying? It's been edited. And you know, it's been proof checked, and so videos can be more entertaining than books, but books are much more educational because a book has 200 or 300 pages. Latest book I read is The Psychology of Money. It's entertaining. There's a lot of information in there, and it'd be impossible to convey the breadth and depth of that information in an 8-minute video. So this channel is more about the psychology of money and a philosophy of money as it relates to having, if not a happy life, at least a content life and a successful retirement. The other thing sort of amuses me is the fact that a lot of these people who are putting out this channel, there's 30 years old telling you how to retire. There's 40 years old, 20 telling you how to retire. None of them have ever been retired, you know, and then you have these CPAs who are in their 50s who are still not retired. I retired at 55, and I've been successfully retired for almost 20 years. Next year, August, it'll be 20 years that I have been retired. And I never really hit a glitch that knocked me off my stride. You know, certainly I've been subject to the same slings and arrows of outrageous fortune that all of us are subject to. But, you know, my retirement was fat. You know, if in the fire community, they talk about fat fire, skinny fire, barista fire, and coast fire. Well, I have a fat fire, but my expenses are skinny. And that makes all the difference in the world. And, you know, I see these videos about, I've got $2 million, can I retire? I've got 500,000, can I retire? Well, teacher once told me that there's no such thing as a stupid question, but that's kind of a stupid question. You can retire when you've got enough money to retire. How much do you need? You need however much you spend. So if you spend $25,000 a year like I do, I could probably be okay with 30 with my Social Security income. You know, the fact that my income is 4 times that 30, it really doesn't matter to me because the money just goes straight to savings. But you don't need some fancy calculation to figure out if you've got enough to retire, because the answer is, do you have enough passive income to pay your cost of living? And if the answer is yes, then you can retire. If you retire before then, you're not going to retire. You're going to start drawing your Social Security or your pension or whatever it is that is the source of your passive income, but you're going to have to do something to earn more money. if you really want to be happy. And then the question is, are you going to be happy working in a situation that you call retirement? Because the bright line, as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to retirement is, if you're still working because you need the money, you're not retired. Anyway, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. And thank you for stopping by. I hope you see each other again soon. Until then.